This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
You know, many have called the last couple of years the new golden age for annuities. And their sales have hit record highs thanks to the highest interest rates in a generation. You know, higher rates mean better returns for annuities, so you can capitalize on these higher interest rates. But, you know, we've seen rates sort of go down a little bit, but not all the way down. So I guess my question is, are we still on this annuity train? Is it still the golden age, or what should we be looking at here?
Well, it's absolutely a hot time in the market for people who provide annuities, but it's not a new time. I mean, we've got to recognize annuities have been around for 2,000 years. They were the mainstay of retirement planning for the last couple hundred years, and it's only been during the last 30 to 40 years when mutual funds kind of had some intoxicating returns there for a period that people looked away from the tried and true strategies and just got all about, you know, how do we get sexy returns? Well, we've seen some hard times here over the last 20 years, and people are kind of coming back full circle. So it's not a new thing, although it is a new discovery for some people, that annuities are a wonderful complement. They're not the be-all and end-all. They are a tool like any other tool. And so when we talk about vehicles, for example, we've got cars, we got boats, we got planes. People who knock annuities are like airplane salesmen who don't believe that there's a purpose for boats in life. And I always say, you know, anyone who's excluding a particular concept must be pushing something else. We've got to have our minds open to whatever tools or vehicles are best for our circumstances. And I love annuities. I mean, I personally own 6 of them, and I will own more before I'm done. I just personally bought a couple more just within the last month. And annuities can do some unique things for you. I mean, basically, at their core, they are savings accounts from insurance companies. And there's 2 key purposes. One is to help people safely grow money. The second is to help people create income that they can never outlive. And so the type of annuity, I mean, there's literally thousands of varieties, so we can't say annuity and think just one thing. It can mean many, many, many different things to different people. But if the concern, for example, is creating income, as is my concern for my wife. I mean, my wife, she's got her hands full with medical issues and with children who have special needs, and she really hasn't engaged with money. And I say this knowing that she's hearing this and won't be offended, but she knows that my overriding concern is that she be okay. I get a little emotional here, sorry. You know, when I'm dead and gone, I want to be absolutely certain that she and my son, well, all my children, but she and my son in particular, who has special needs, that they always have income, that there is money hitting their account every month, and they don't have to think about that. They, you know, they do need to stay within the budget, as it were, the amount of money that's hitting there. But between Social Security, investments, and these annuities that we have, they have security. She does not need to worry about running out of money. There will always be money. So if you like the idea of a private pension, that, frankly, is what an annuity is at its core and what it's most known for. I mean, you go back and you read the Jane Austen novels from a couple hundred years ago, she talks ad nauseum about annuities because they are a wonderful thing. The studies are overwhelmingly clear that people who have guaranteed sources of income are not only happier, but they live longer. Now, happier makes sense because they don't have stress. They actually live longer. When I first talked to my dad about these years ago, he made a funny observation living in Vegas as we do. He said, "Oh, so the longer I live, the more I get to beat the house?" Well, yeah, that's one way of looking at it, Dad.
Yeah.
But it was wise, I thought, because there is an incentive to live that much longer, you know, when you know you got another check coming to you. And if you know the check's coming, you might as well spend it because another one's coming behind it. So annuities are a wonderful thing. It is kind of a golden age because suddenly there's an open-mindedness again. People are turning back to tried and true solutions that were used literally for centuries and benefiting from it. So if people that are listening here, if they don't know anything about annuities, again, we've got books and different materials. There's a great white paper that was put out by Roger Ibbotson from Yale, and I'd love to offer that to our readers for free. You know, just give us a call. We'll shoot you an email with that white paper, and it talks about annuities and considering alternatives to them. And he makes, now this Roger Ibbotson, I mean, this is a really big name economist in the United States. Ibbotson says that if you go back historically speaking and you do an analysis, you'll see that fixed indexed annuities in particular outperform bonds on a long-term basis. And that can be very comforting because we can build in gains without taking any losses with these products.
Kind of continuing the conversation here with just income, right? Because the number one thing is I don't want to run out of money, and how much money do I need, and how did you put this whole puzzle piece together? Well, Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary recently said that you need $5 million to retire. Now, he's done a total reversal on this number, and now he says that with careful investing, you can retire on just $500,000. It's a big jump there, guys. $5 million to $500,000. Here's his plan. He says fixed income products that can return 5%. Okay. And then he says a balanced portfolio that returns 8 to 9%. Here's the thing about this. This 8 to 9% seems really high to me. It seems really overzealous. Does that come with a level of risk that our listeners will be actually uncomfortable with, you think?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's products that absolutely can return that on a long-term basis. Typically, those that return it on a fixed, regular basis do have some risk involved, and they often involve real estate and the like, which makes many people anxious. But yeah, I think those kind of returns are realistic. I think the bigger question here, though, I think they call him Mr. Wonderful. I'm sure he's a great guy. Is that you can't put out a one-size-fits-all kind of measurement and say this is what everyone has to have. Number one is it freaks people out, because when you start hearing numbers in the 1, 2, 3, 5 million kind of range, that freaks most average Americans out, and it then paralyzes them from actually saving anything. So I personally am not of a mindset where I put those kind of targets out. I mean, we can do the math like anyone else, but my personal belief is we need to start from where a person's at, and we need to progressively build on that. So if you're saving $25 a month, well, let's get it to 35, and then 45, and then 70, and then 100, and so on. We go to 1,000 and more. But we build on strains, just like the physical trainer would have you build on successes. But the other thing that we need to realize is that everyone can retire if they're willing to live on the income that they have. And so sometimes that means we just have to adjust expectations. I mean, it's something like 42% of Americans retire earlier than expected for reasons beyond their control. That could be a health situation, a crisis of some type, or it can be just a loss of a job. I had a guy in this last week who, he's worked 27 years for a company, and then suddenly he was let off. And he's saying, what do I do now in my 50s, mid 50s? He started talking about ageism and how difficult it is to get an interview for another job. And so we start talking about expectations. Sometimes we just have to modify expectations. So there is not a one size fits all. That would be kind of my polite rebuke to, Mr. Wonderful, is please don't throw those kind of numbers out because it paralyzes people. Let's just start from where you're at. Everyone can make progress with personal commitment, with some sacrifice. Sometimes we have to give up some things now so that we can have other things later. That's the beauty of sacrifice, is we can have better things in the future. And we help people with this. So don't get freaked out. Come visit with us, and we can show you how to do this. Like the age-old adage, we can take that elephant and we can eat it bite by bite, not just in one big chunk. We can work our way through it, whatever analogy you want to use. But let's not overwhelm ourselves. Let's take it a step at a time from wherever you are to where you want to be.
Now, Harrison Ford, he is a Hollywood favorite, obviously one of the greats out there with a career spanning over 7 decades. You know him from Star Wars all the way to Indiana Jones. One of my favorites, Mark, is The Fugitive. Are you a big fan of his?
Oh gosh, I love that show. I think I just love me some Harrison Ford. I mean, pretty much anything he's ever that I've ever seen him in, I've enjoyed. He's got kind of an everyman quality. Tom Hanks has a certain everyman quality, but Harrison Ford has one that I relate to much more. Kind of that no nonsense, Yeah, I just love it. I mean, this new 1923 or whatever that Taylor Sheridan thing is. He does a great job in that role.
That's right. Yeah. He's been doing this for a long time. That's right, the 1923 thing. And then, of course, he's got his Emmy-nominated comedy series called Shrinking. That's on Apple TV. And again, with over 7 decades of experience doing movies, a lot of folks are going, all right, man, what's next for you? Well, the Wall Street Journal got a chance to ask him, and Ford, at age 82, answered this way.
Stop working, but I want to finish what I'm doing. I like to spend more time flying. I like to spend more time with my family at home. I have things in my life outside of movies.
So his first response there is, what's next? Well, stop working, but I want to finish, I got my hands in a couple piles of things. I kind of want to finish those up here and there. And It got me thinking about, the reactions that you get from clients when they sit down with you and they say, all right, here's my plan. Here's how I want to retire. I have this quote, even retirement script. How do you help them when it comes to having those financial resources to make this come true when it comes to retirement?
Oh, there's a lot to be done for preparation, but I think Harrison Ford's life story is a great example. I mean, we all remember the stories of how he was he was supporting himself as a carpenter at the time he got the Han Solo role in Star Wars. And then he's gone on and had such an illustrious career in Hollywood, but he's also had these side passions. I mean, he mentioned flying there. We've all read stories about him flying. I remember the one where he picked up a hiker outside of Jackson Hole and the poor woman vomited in his helicopter.
Oh my gosh.
And she was so mortified by it, but he was just so gracious about it. But I have dear ties to the Jackson Hole area, and I just so admire the man that he's lived his life through these different kinds of experiences that no one probably could have fully predicted, but he made choices. I mean, he obviously learned how to fly, and he loves to fly. I mean, it's a passion for him. So the thing I love most about working with people is helping them identify their passion and actually start to focus on it. Because for most of us, we're so busy living our lives, trying to feed the kids, trying to pay for diapers, trying to just get ahead and keep the alligators at bay, as it were, the debt collectors during those early years. And then we get to a point where we start to see the finish line coming in sight. Before we know it, I'm 58 years old, and I was just talking to someone this last week about how in the world did we get to this point? I could barely remember the last 5 years and all that's happened. Things start speeding up. And so we help people with that by helping them identify where you at and where do you want to be. That's a fundamentally difficult thing for many people to do, because so many people are so deep in the weeds, whacking away at the bush, just trying to make a trail forward, that they don't sometimes climb up the proverbial palm tree to see, okay, where do we want to go? And what they find when they climb that palm tree is they've been, cutting circles in the tall grass. They've really kind of been spinning their wheels in many ways. And so we do have to periodically rise above the tall grass, climb the tree, and orient ourselves towards where are we trying to go. We have to do that on a regular basis. And I have the privilege of helping clients do that, to have these conversations. Of course, it sounds like we're just measuring fuel when we're talking about dollars, but retirement in life obviously isn't about money. It shouldn't be about money. Money is just fuel. And to the degree that we have stored it up, then we're going to be able to fuel the engine of whatever it is that drives us into the future. And if that's flying planes, like Harrison Ford says, or if that's out working at the food bank, like some of my clients are totally committed to doing, and that I personally love to do, that whatever it is that drives your passion, that's what we need to clarify. And then we can create a roadmap around that.
Believe it or not, Michael Jackson's estate is back in the news. It's battling an auction house that's planning to sell 2 cassettes of the late pop star's unreleased music from the late 1980s to the early 1990s. The estate says that the cassettes are copies of master recordings that are locked up in a vault and should therefore not be sold. Makes sense, kind of. So is there an estate planning lesson that we can learn from this, Mark? And how do you help retirees protect their wealth and even their assets from being misused or even misrepresented after they're gone?
Oh, gosh, I love this question, because there's so many nightmares that we see unfolding because people just procrastinated. They just kept pushing off actually having that estate planning conversation. Now, I'm not an estate planning attorney, but I am a strong advocate for having a good estate planning attorney on the team and a good certified public accountant on the team. The three of us working in tandem can really cover each other's blind spots and help people prepare. But there are so many tragic stories of these well-to-do people like Michael Jackson here and Elvis Presley and Nat King Cole. I mean, we can go on for days listing people who have been going. I mean, Aretha Franklin's estate, all this stuff has been in the news. Prince, yep. He's really been in the news lately. All these people that could afford to have had the best legal help just somehow didn't quite get around to it, which I find stunning, because for the average married couple, the cost of creating a living trust with all the health directives and the power of attorneys that are needed as kind of a suite of documents that you need, that's typically going to run somewhere between $1,500 to $2,500, at least with the attorneys that we're referring to. It's painful to write that check for all of us, of course, but in the scheme of a 10, 20, 30, 40-year retirement, that's chump change. And the really sad thing is that there's some things that attorneys don't address, perhaps like this Michael Jackson, music and the vault stuff you're describing. There's things that we do, tools that we provide, books and workbooks and worksheets and things that we provide to our clients to help them start addressing this. I'm a big advocate of family meetings to start having discussions well in advance. There's some things that need to be written down and made very clear. And I'll give a personal example here that people may think is kind of stupid or funny perhaps, but I'm a traditional kind of old school kind of guy. And we have Alzheimer's through our family, with my dad and both my grandfathers. And I fear that day may come for me when I need help. And there's things my family could do for me that, frankly, I don't want my daughter doing for me. And so I've created plans within our financial plans created funds to be able to pay for the kind of care that's needed. But from the estate planning standpoint, I've also clearly communicated to my family, I don't want a woman nurse. Now, I'm not sexist. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. I'm not sexist. I'm just saying I don't want to blush when someone has to bathe me. If some poor schmuck has to do that, then let's get some former football player who's working in caregiving to do that. Some guy who, neither one of us are going to enjoy the experience, but what needs to be done can be done. But I don't want a woman in the shower with me or in the toilet areas with me. I certainly don't want my daughter doing that. But that's the kind of thing that the attorney's not going to take the time to write out. So there's some things that the attorney has to do for you, and there's some things that we have to do for ourselves. And it starts really with communicating with our family very, very clearly, those detailed things that make a difference to us. Because for me, it would be a living hell to have to endure the humiliation of some, strange woman bathing me, and again, I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm just saying Mark Cordner's preference is to have a little bit of dignity at the end when there's not a whole lot of dignity left. And so to me, all of this is about dignity. Everything we do with retirement planning, creating income people can't outlive, getting these estate plans in order, it's all about dignity, because towards the end of life, our worlds tend to get a little bit smaller. The circle starts closing in, and we need to have dignity. That's just so crucially important. So we'd love to help people have those conversations. More than anything, I'm raising questions that they and their family and us with documents and the attorney can all make sure goes well. It's all about communicating in advance.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.